What's going on, wrestling fans? It's I, Steve Fall. Welcome back to 10 Count Media. I hope you have your sunscreen ready because today on the Golden Era Podcast with Sean Mooney, we're talking about SummerSlam. You got to say it the right way. If you're not feeling pain, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, it's going to get hot. This episode's going to get hot.
Oh, yeah.
SummerSlam.
I know. How is he not?
My voice would
how do you survive?
to him. That's why I think those things would never be. Well, one he did. I think it was like this really long card, and I'm like, oh my god, how could he talk after that? But Vince, has some deep pipes, so he could do it.
It's just
but
the voice.
It drove me crazy. I hated it. I hated that thing. But it talk about it's the hype and get it in the grit. Vince had it for sure.
And the classic SummerSlam music for 1990.
I don't know if I can go on. I don't know if I can go forward on. I don't know if we can do this episode.
I'm so sorry, folks. We'll have to shut it. We'll have to shut it down. He just wants to go by the beach.
Wait,
That's all.
No.
He just wants to go to the beach. Excuses. I think SummerSlam 1990 is in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most backstage and promos for this event. I think it won. I honestly, and I have no problem with backstage promos, but I kid you, everybody
got a shot.
Everyone got to talk that day. Why do you think that was though? Like, why do you think everyone's like, we didn't have to fill in time. There's a lot of matches.
Yeah, well, you talk about losing your voice. I don't even remember how many promos we did, and I know Gene did as many as I did, if not more. I think it was just an era also of just super promotion. Take advantage of every moment that we've got a captive audience and keep selling them. And it was a chance to introduce some of these guys that people knew, but really didn't get that many chances to do big promos besides the generic ones you might see on the event center. And so it was just an era when they really were doing super promotional work and just not wasting a second when we were doing these pay-per-view events. And boy, did they get practice that day.
That's so true. Yeah. And we talked before, though. Some of these live, some of these taped, like, is it a mixed bag?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. As I've talked about before, that it just depended on, the situation with the match. If it was a post-match, that wasn't something you could really create before it happened, even if you knew the outcome, because you wanted the guys to look like they did in there. If Warrior had the paint knocked off of him, you wanted to see, you had to see the same thing. Although in this one was interesting when we talk about the demolition match and all the shenanigans, but when what you think you can get away with, but you wanted to have consistency there and also the feeling for the moment. But in a sizable production like that, any way you can be more efficient and nobody's going to know the difference, why not? But still, you've got you've got to get it done. And as I've always said, to me, it was live to tape. You didn't go in there thinking, we don't get this right, we'll just do it again. You basically, get the one shot. And I love hearing some of these pundits talk about these events where they're saying, let's go. So this is one of the 7 takes that they did for this one. That certainly happened in some cases, but for the most part, you better frickin' nail it because we got to move on, and you're used to doing this stuff and get it right. And that was always something that I was really concerned with, Steve, because, like I said, I'm the mic stand, and I don't want to be that guy who screws that up when you've got 4 or 5 guys that need to talk. You just make sure you put that mic in the right place. You remember whatever the bridge line is you're going to do, whatever you've come up with or worked out with them, and you get it to them, you move it, and you're out. Back to you at ringside.
Back to you, Gene.
Yeah. Back to you, Gorilla.
Yeah. Back to you,
Although
Gorilla.
He wasn't there.
I know this is a weird.
Yeah.
This is a weird event because it's missing some familiar faces. And one of the big ones is Jesse the Body Ventura. And last week we talked about SummerSlam 1989 where Gorilla was missing and we didn't really know a reason why it's SummerSlam 1989. He was missing. We couldn't really figure one out. This one, while Jesse is not here, is because outside influences. He's going to have an opportunity to make a video game. And of course, it's his likeness, it's his name, but he's also on a television show that is making him famous. Yes, he was in movies. Yes, he did other things. But where he's known for, professional wrestling in the WWE. And I'm guessing Vince McMahon wanted a piece of that pie. And Jesse wasn't going to back down to that and was like, nah, I'm good. What really sucks is, though, this video game is never released in America. It comes out in Japan, not America. So all these fights, all this anger for nothing. What do you think about that?
No, sir. No, not at
you have
all.
you have
No,
updating, you have
not for
updating.
not, you're saying? I have said this before, and I will say it again. Professional wrestling owes Jesse Ventura
True.
a
All right.
great deal of credit because early on, when all this was going, because let's remember what the business was like back then. You're on your own. You are your own businessman. And Vince took full advantage of that, of working these guys against each other and saying, look, okay, it doesn't work for you. I lose one guy. I don't lose 60 or whatever it is. And he knew that's the way he had to keep it. And Jesse was somebody who had a great deal of confidence in what he was capable of doing as an entertainer. And he saw how people and how things worked in Hollywood. This is a gigantic entertainment industry that is growing, and there's one guy who's benefiting from it all, and that is not right. And in that sense, he was very correct. And the problem was, when it all came down to it, nobody was willing to stand next to him, which is, when he first would talk to these guys and talk to them behind the scenes and whatever, they're like, yeah, we need to do this. And then when it came right down to it, and we know what happened with the Hulkster going to Vince and that when they were trying to organize at the time, and that thing was shut down overnight. And so Jesse was certainly a principled man. You got to look back at what he sacrificed, a lot of years that probably could have made a tremendous amount more money, but he said, no, this is wrong. And he stood up, and eventually he came out on top of it. It still cost him a great deal of his career with the WWE. But you say, yeah, that this one little game or whatever, it was like, what was the big deal? Well, he helped pave that road, Steve, for these guys.
My apologies, Jesse Ventura.
I'm just saying, though.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, though.
Guys from that era. And I saw Jesse, that was the one thing I would go up and say to him. And I would say, Jesse, whatever his work, whatever your feeling was, which he was a great and still remains a very good announcer, but I would say, thank you. Thank you, Jesse. You were somebody who, at the time, it was not a popular thing to do. It cost you dearly, and yet you would not back down. And he didn't. And he set the stage for all of that happening, where guys would eventually get royalties for everything, not just the video games, but the merchandise. And how much is that a part of what these guys benefit from now? And that is endless. A gigantic. I saw a clip a few weeks ago of Greg Valentine talking about, the days back then, and he's very appreciative of everything that happened to him. And he talks about, at one point, they had a beef about something that was going on, and he went into Vince's office all fired up. We're going to tell him we're not going to stand for this. And Vince hands him a check. Oh, by the way, did you guys see this? We didn't get this one to you yet. And it was from those early those action figures. I think he said the check was for something well over $200,000. Now, think about what these guys had been earning prior to that. They're doing pretty well with the WWE. Some of them making a couple $100,000, the big guys making more. Hulkster, of course, entering the million plus area. But you imagine somebody handing you a check for $200 and something thousand and say, oh yeah, this is for those action figures that you didn't have to do a damn thing for, but people bought, and this is your piece. So when you look back at that, that's a huge thing to me. I credit Jesse for really having the guts to stand up for it, and having it cost him the price for doing that. It's amazing.
He went to WCW after that, though. But do you think that Vince McMahon did deserve a slice of that pie, or no?
Oh no, absolutely. There's no question. And the biggest piece of that pie.
Mhm.
He's the one that made it all happen. But my thought, but these guys, their likeness and everything, as we're seeing when it comes down to even with college athletes today, without them, you don't have anything. So you got to share that pie. Necessarily, they got to have the same slice, but you better give them a piece.
Yeah, we've seen over the years with at least for now, currently, when women wrestlers get laid off, they kind of bring up, well, like, I wanted to open, this is years ago too, they wanted to open like a Twitch account to play video games and make money off of their wrestler's name while playing video games online or having a Twitter or having a YouTube
Hmm.
channel. And it turns out Vince was, no, because that's third party. I'm not getting a piece of that. You're getting it. YouTube's making money. What about me? I'm putting you on television. I own the copyright to your name, the
Hmm.
one you're using on television. Where's my money? So you shut
Yeah.
that shit down. Underneath Triple H, I believe new contracts are drawn up, so we can all, everyone, the WWE, the wrestler, and the third party can all make money together. So
Yeah.
it's changed obviously, but Jesse, we brought up before, sued for Coliseum videos. You know how? Hey, Sean Mooney, are you seeing any money from those times
Yeah,
you're
I'm
on
not seeing the
all of
residuals.
those
Yeah.
Coliseum videos?
No, not oh my God. I wish. Look how many of those I did. Uh, you know, I remember, and I've told this story before. I used to negotiate my whatever you want to call them deals, contracts with Linda McMahon. I would sit across the desk from her. She was in charge of that part of it. And in the early days of my contract, and they were paying me pretty well for doing the event center. But I was thinking, no, I'm doing all these Coliseum videos, and I'm not really getting anything. And I know they're selling them, and I was big. Well, you know what, Linda? I think I should get something extra for doing these Coliseum videos. And she's kind of like, exactly right. What if we gave? I think it was. What if we did? I don't know, $1,000 for everyone you did? Huh, sold.
Yeah.
And I walked out of that office going, "Yeah, Mooney, geez, what a businessman! What a deal maker you
Go buy a
are."
car right
I
now. You're
should
on
have.
a roll.
I should have said, "Hey, Linda, how about instead of $1,000, how about 1%, just a point?"
Hmm. On
I
the
think
back
that would
end.
have been worth a few dollars, but I got a lot of those that we could talk about, but we're not here to talk about that today. But
No, 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 no.
but really, and you talk about with Vince and his foresight on all this. That's why he always, when he brought somebody in, he made them somebody new. Besides remarketing them in a sense, but if you own that name, he was thinking ahead that the marketing purposes. I
Of
own
course.
that name because I came up with it and I promote it in my company. You can go wherever you like, but you try and become that character somewhere else, we're going to have a little problem. And if it's
We
ever
will find
merchandise doing
you.
anything else, then there you go. So, other people that were on along these lines, it's, Sergeant Slaughter too. Got to give him credit and that
Oh
what
yeah,
he
it's
was able
true.
to do and that he had that character. That was something that Vince wasn't able to touch. So it is, it's tremendous the way it's turned out. But back then it was a whole different game. And Jesse was one of those guys who stood up
Yeah.
all alone to do it.
We missed him. This was his first pay-per-view without Jesse since WrestleMania 1, where
Mhm.
him and Gorilla were there. And yeah, he goes on to WCW, then he disappears for a while. He becomes governor, returns to the WWF in 2000. Well, 1999, he's like the referee at SummerSlam 1999. So eventually everyone makes good Hall of Fame, all that good stuff. But
Mhm.
yeah, it was such a just weird time. And it's interesting because a few days before SummerSlam 1990, there is a meeting between Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, and a man named Mean Mark Callis. And
Who was
yeah, who could
that?
that be? He's the future Undertaker. And apparently Vince saw a tape of him and was not impressed. And Bruce is
Yeah.
like, no, you have to meet him. You have to meet him. And when they met, Vince like, oh my God, look at
God,
him.
yeah.
Jesus,
Look
so
at this
masculine.
guy.
And then
Oh,
so, as the
oh.
story goes, Undertaker is eventually, signed and SummerSlam is the
It kind of
main
worked
event
out
Survivor
for that
Series
guy.
1990.
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Great,
sort of think it worked out for
great
him.
promise.
It's interesting though, like how many tapes? So you worked, I know you didn't work like actually in the office, you worked at the studio, but like how often do tapes and pictures of people who want to become professional wrestlers get brought into Stanford? Was that a common thing?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I remember, one time being in Bruce's office. He had a box that was, a big moving box. It was just full of tapes that they throw the tapes into, and many of them I think ended up getting recycled for for other purposes. But oh yeah, I mean, especially when things took off, everybody wanted to be a part of it. And they had a ring at the warehouse in Stamford at Hamilton Avenue, and where they would bring people in. It was kind of this secret behind when, or they would use that to take a look at somebody, or to work on something with a match. They would go and do it there. It was this undisclosed location that nobody really knew about, and they would do it late at night, or I would say late at night, but they would come in the evening, bring these guys in, and that was very common. Yeah, that was and also they would bring in announcers, and we did a lot of stuff with NBC. And when they would audition people and they didn't really want people to know about what was going on in New York, they'd bring those guys up there and go into our audio booth. That happened many times.
Wow.
So
wow.
yeah, that's a little side nugget.
Yeah, no kidding, because it's just strange. Like Taker, Vince sees a tape of Taker. He's a tall guy. Vince likes big men. You can clearly tell in the company right now, but yet no interest in him. One half of a tag team called the Skyscrapers, and then he gets brought in. Obviously, he gets changed up, becomes Undertaker, and that's the thing we brought up earlier is, well, if we brought him as Mean Mark Callis, well, we know him from WCW as Mean Mark Callis. You made him the Undertaker.
You would have never heard of Mark Callis if it wasn't for the Undertaker.
Mean Mark Callis.
And also, you mentioned this makes you really understand, why Bruce was so close to Mark throughout his career, because they had history, and Bruce was basically responsible for making that happen. So that's and there were others too, because
of course
Bruce has had many great relationships with these guys. We should get into, when we're talking about the announcers, that it was kind of an interesting choice who they brought in to pair with Vince was Roddy.
Hot Rod.
I remember that too, thinking, can we take 2 hours or 3 hours of Roddy? I mean, Roddy to me was always great in doses, but there was always like some point like, okay, all right, we're good. But I thought I thought in this one though, I think that
it's so funny.
Roddy may have seen, this would be kind of something that I could keep doing. I'm not going to be able to keep stepping in the ring all the time, and he could still go, but so I think that he was measured, and I think he was really took it very seriously. Had done his homework about putting people over, and I'm not to say that he didn't know how to do that. I'm just saying, as an announcer, the techniques and stuff of doing it, the way Bobby did it, the way the other guys did it, the way Jesse did, that kind of thing. So it was an interesting choice. I didn't think it was really going to work real well, but I think overall, he did a pretty good job.
Though when you go on and read reviews about, say, this event or Survivor Series 1990, when he does it as well in commentary, I'm not suggesting it. I'm just going to tell you what the reviews are. They call them Coke-filled commentary. All right. Now, I can't confirm.
Right. Maybe I'm a little biased. I loved Roddy, so but yeah, okay. Maybe it was, but maybe I was being too kind.
He's going over there. Oh yeah, like he's just screaming. I love him. Again, no, I don't. If he's coked up, fine. I don't care.
Yeah, what are you doing? Yeah.
Oh God, look at him go. Oh, yeah, he would just be screaming.
Okay.
I love it. So if they are Coke-filled commentary, keep on going, Roddy.
Well,
keep doing those bumps if it's true.
Exactly.
I can't confirm or deny that's true or not. I want to know, though, we've talked about it before. We will talk about it later on the show, but like the main event of this. But I really want to get into something we haven't talked about, and it's sewer rats. Now
we're gonna go.
We're gonna go to sewer rats here
big
because
ones. You're talking about the big. Not just
Harlem.
Big. I'm talking Harlem sewer. I can't even fit it. They won't. We're bigger than cats.
According to
dogs.
Bad News.
Not even bigger than small dogs. We're talking medium. I mean, they're like big, nasty, gnarly,
huge
rats.
And
rats. They can take on. You know what they love to eat too?
I
thought.
Yeah, because we had Matilda, we had Frankie, we had Damien. So we have our I guess our good animals. But now we're introducing evil animals with heel characters.
Well,
Harlem sewer rats.
yeah,
Jake the Snake's fighting Bad News Brown. Animal versus animal. Harlem street fight featuring
yeah,
live animals. Now we have seen Damien multiple times, so we know what he looks like. We know it's a snake. It's very large and it's green. Harlem
yeah.
sewer rats. Can you describe to me what you thought was supposed to be presented to you and what actually is presented to the audience at home? We were supposed to be like super rats, and what we got was maybe possibly fucking possums.
Oh, Steve, come on. You don't think that that was a Harlem sewer rat that was featured in those vignettes? I thought it was interesting and a bit of a stretch to assume that even gigantic Harlem sewer rats would like Python. I had never heard. I've heard of large rats in New York City, but never, not even in the sewer system that some Python had come up through somebody's toilet. And so I thought that was a big assumption to think that those sewer rats would prefer or really enjoy Python. But hey, the
Don't judge.
the idea and you can go with it. Yeah, it was a possum. You're right. Uh, they didn't really exist. I'm sure there's large rats, but these were possums. And why do I know that, Steve Fall? Why do I know firsthand that that was a possum?
Hmm. Do you have any
Because
investigating stories you'd like to share with
I'm
us?
going to reveal this behind. Oh, yeah, okay.
Good.
That we used to shoot the vignettes. Remember, I've told you before that we would do them at Stamford,
Mhm.
at Hamilton Avenue, and we had a big studio there, and we would bring the guys in to shoot these vignettes. And Bad News Brown, they brought him in to do this whole setup with the Harlem sewer rats. Now we had people that were animal handlers so that we could get different types of animals for these things because we were doing a lot of animals, as you mentioned. And they brought in this one possum, and the idea was that Bad News Brown was going to hold up exactly what this rat looks like and how big it was, and that this is what's going to happen with you, Jake Roberts, and your snake you bring around. And the idea was he was taking this and he was to throw this possum into this big trash can. It was a big metal trash can.
Okay.
Well, B&B was, an incredibly talented performer in the ring and as badass as you could possibly be. I mean, he was a badass. There's no question. It shouldn't have been bad news. It should have been badass Brown. That guy had a reputation for, he said like he was known famous for, he would say there's two things I love to do, fighting and effing. That was kind of like his thing. And he legit loved to fight.
And
So
apparently the other thing.
he was bad. Yeah, he was a badass. Real kidding. So, but my point is, he wasn't greatest at cutting promos. So, as you can imagine, we might have had to do a more than one of these takes. And the poor possum. They're shooting this thing, and you get to it and almost get it, and unfortunately, most of these things that we would have to redo it is after he tossed this poor possum into this trash can. I don't know how many takes we did, but I remember after a while, at first that possum, they're worried that thing's jumping out of there. They're trying to grab it, whatever. Then after about the fourth or fifth time, that thing's getting a little like punch drunk from just getting tossed in there, and he's just getting beat to hell. And they didn't have a backup possum. They had the possum. That was the one they're going to do.
Where's the backup one?
And I don't know how many. And by the time the end of this thing, the thing is kind of like, like I don't care what you do to me, just make it stop.
Oh my God.
So the cage, there weren't a whole bunch. You see, we kind of lifted up for there's nothing really in. There's nothing in there. There's no backups to help this poor bastard out. And I'm sure that I hope Mr. Possum recovered from his injuries, but I remember the animal guy off to the side just kind of just like like squirming of okay, how much longer? Because he doesn't want to bring back a dead possum. But I remember them doing a number of takes, and that poor possum was just beat up, and it's thank God it's a different era of like if people really knew it behind the scenes there, we might have been a little trouble for animal cruelty. I'm not going to go. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there may have been an edge where people might have been concerned. But man, what a I'm glad they finally got that take, and nobody was happier than that Harlem sewer rat.
Of course,
that night.
I have a theory that the WWF World Wildlife Fund got a wind of this, and that's why they wouldn't let up and sued the shit. The WWF.
I know the possum was still breathing and was moving around and was seemed to be okay, but he did take
a beating,
a number of dives, and it wasn't to work.
Wow. Yeah. When they show that sewer rat and it's like biting the cage. It's part of that same possum. Like, help me, let me out. What's it doing with its mouth? I think it's talking to me.
I'm not a Harlem sewer rat. I'm a possum. I have a family.
Shut up and get in there, you rat.
Tough work.
Hey man, sometimes you gotta dress up.
Yeah, they told them, they're like, look, you're gonna go, it's gonna be doing this vignette for the WWF,
big time TV.
And it's Bad News Brown, he's a big star, it'll be easy.
They might do a spin-off. Yeah, eat possum spin-off
before you know it.
Maybe back home with Mrs. Possum and the kids later this evening. Don't you worry. Don't worry, George. We got you.
They had a lot of kids.
I bet they did. Yeah. They were sucking on them Mama Possum's teeth. But man. Yeah, that's one of those moments from this event where you're like, man, promos in a sewer rat really jump out to me as one of those, like, wow, there's some crazy shit going on here.
Yeah, and you never got to see them. Remember, ringside, they never were released. It didn't have, it was over. So
I remember though watching it and the event thinking like that there was a box and they were trying to suggest that in that box, all these, I'm like, holy shit. Like, I don't want to even see the visual of them taking the top off. And you just imagine all these rats running all over each other and eating each other. Like, please don't show that. Thank God they didn't. But that was one of those moments of like, this is a little scary.
Yeah. They needed to put something in there that would have the kid rattling was during the match. Those things are starting to get out.
Shake it.
Because they love python so much. It's like, God, I'm so hungry. They haven't fed me. But boy, I can get some python.
And we did a whole episode on Earthquake destroying Hulkamania before this is Hulk Hogan's return on this event. We did a whole show about it, like an hour and a half. If you want to check that out, go in the archives, check it out. We did an amazing job talking about Tugboat and Big Boss Man and Jimmy Hart and everyone. But people were still questioning of, should the return of Hulk Hogan be the main event of SummerSlam, or should the world champion, no matter who you are, should you be the main event? And the argument still is like, well, people believe the champion should always be the main event. How do you feel about this SummerSlam though? Since Warrior's a champion, fighting Rick Rude, it's like the fourth time they fight on pay-per-view, but do you believe the championship should always be the main event no matter who holds it?
Yeah, I think because otherwise you lessen the value of the belt. I mean, that's the epitome. That's the top of the mountain. And I think when you do that, if it's not, it's maybe, I mean, you double main event or something, but you can't put it under. I think that just it takes away whoever the challenger is by far. And so I don't. You can argue as far as after you watch this event, which one might have deserved to be on top, whatever. But I still wouldn't have changed the order. I think that you had to go with the championship on top, and every time. I really do. I believe that too.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny is this SummerSlam 1990 has so many beats that we've done podcasts about, like an hour long, about different coverage of these events. But there's some that people have corrected us on that I'm glad we get to fix here today, because the first match is Power and Glory versus the Rockers. And we did a whole Rockers episode too, to why they broke up and their whole run in the WWF. So check that out as well. But the thing with that is people were like, why is this match only one-sided? Why is Shawn Michaels on the outside? I guess on our show, we didn't really clarify why Shawn Michaels on the outside. So let me clarify. Apparently, he blew out his ACL, but also in his book Shawn Michaels says he got in a motorcycle accident. So now there is no true facts of people picking up about what we said, because now there's two stories, one in a book, one through the internet rumors and the Wrestling Observer. Do you know why Shawn Michaels is hurt heading into the SummerSlam? The real story.
Well,
Also related?
I don't see why it had to be fabricated by saying that if that was the case that that it happened in a motorcycle accident. What difference really does it make that what happened, how it really happened, unless there was some nefarious circumstances behind it, or stuff happens. I mean, these guys with the constant work, and then suddenly you tear a meniscus or you do something like that. Well, that happened then too, and so I was really was surprised by the controversy surrounding it, of what the true story is, and then apparently this continues on to this day. But I'll take Shawn Michaels' word for it. I don't really understand what other reason he would have had to have fabricated what happened. So and what the thought behind, I guess, to get everybody to the ring, where you had to do the chain thing with Hercules instead of announcing prior to the match that Shawn Michaels is hurt, he's not going to be able to perform, and saying, no, let's get everybody to the ring. And they think, and that we've got the Rockers that are going to be doing their thing, and then we can take care of Shawn early on, and throughout the match he can still kind of be involved, and we'll go over and do the kick the knee or whatever body part you've got that's ailing to keep you where you're supposed to be. So that I just, to me, it's one of those, okay, unless I totally missed on this, and there may be some people out there that have more information on it than I do, but my thought on it was that they did that because that's what I had heard, that he had hurt his knee, that they needed to make that match happen. You needed those people to show up to the ring to keep people interested and wanting to watch it. That's pretty much the way I took it in. But
it's so weird that it's still a
mystery. It wasn't a big, I didn't, it wasn't at the time. I don't remember hearing well, what really happened. I think he's, says it was on a motorcycle, and okay,
because you injure your leg in wrestling, people get injured all the time, but then when his book comes out, he's like, oh no, it was a motorcycle accident. Did you just not want to lose to Power and Glory, so you came up with a reason to actually lose, but in a way you didn't really beat me because I'm hurt in reality, I can't get hurt.
Yeah, and I found it interesting, the notes, like you say, it was proven false by observer reports. And how is it proven false?
Right. Because
I don't know what were they
because
saying?
Someone backstage whispered to Dave Meltzer, hey, the real reason is he hurt himself here, or he did that. That's the reason why he's hurt. Yeah. So in reality, it's like, well, you're.
So what was the other story? I don't remember. Like I said, I don't remember.
There's only two of them. One is motorcycle accident, or what the Observer is saying is he blew out his leg in August 2nd before the event, so he couldn't really compete. So they had that chain moment you're talking about in the match to set it all up. I think it's really bizarre that there's still a mystery of why it happened, but the real mystery is who cares? He got hurt. And why was it be the first match too? If he's hurt, he can't wrestle, why is that the first match?
Yeah. But this was something we did on a regular basis, that people would be hurt, and they still wanted the match to happen, and it was like injuries to a professional athlete, where you don't want to reveal this, not necessarily because of who you're playing, but also because you want people to still want to see it, that person is going to be there, and they would find different ways to work them in the match still, but they couldn't perform at 100%. Some of them a lot less, maybe 50%, but at least you have them there, and there is that presence. So to hear stuff like that he'd hurt his knee, and I didn't know really to what extent and how much he was capable of doing, but to try and keep him involved in it made perfect sense to me. You needed the marquee, and he was there. He just couldn't do the stuff you were used to seeing him do. And overall, it wasn't an awful matchup at which you would have expected it to be, with power and glory, Hercules and Paul Roma. But it wasn't awful. I actually thought that that wasn't a bad pairing. And I was and I and me I you know I
I
was
love Power
always
and Glory. Always.
yeah, and I love those guys. I love Herc, and Paul Romer was just worked his ass off, and would be wherever he was on the cards. He just appreciated he was a true superstar, and they gave him pushes here and there. And so I was happy to see it, and I thought, for considering all the stuff that was involved in that matchup, as we talked about, with Sean and everything else, it wasn't an awful match. It really wasn't.
No, I like it. I think it's just
Yeah,
weird
I
that
did
there's
too.
still rumors about this injury.
Yeah.
The second match though, we did a whole hour about as well. Texas Tornado defeats Mr. Perfect to become the Intercontinental Champion. Check out our Texas Tornado episode in the
Yeah,
archives. But the
good one.
backstage story about this one though is very strange. Is British Bulldog was the first choice to replace Brewster Barber Beefcake. Beefcake's supposed to be the one who fights Mr. Perfect here. He gets in a parasailing accident, gets his face crushed in by a woman. He's out for 2 years with this injury.
Yeah.
But originally, British Bulldog was supposed to replace. That's very interesting to me. Also, Bam Bam Bigelow was in the discussion, but the fact
Yeah.
that if Bulldog's visa issues weren't a problem, we would have him as IC champion, not Texas Tornado. So, what do you think that would have looked like versus Texas Tornado? Because Texas comes in, what, 20 something days before this event, and then he beats Mr. Perfect. Like, wow, what a great start. But Bulldog probably needed a kickstart right away.
Yeah. But I think either way, both of them worked out well.
Mm.
It's unfortunate for Kerry that they just couldn't depend on him, but that was a gift they handed to him. And I think that Davy Boy would have handled it the same way. Um, they say about the visa issues, and I think there was a few other things going on, but that's how it played out. Now, Bam Bam, I don't think that was ever really a serious consideration, but he did make that list, which is credit to him. But for me, I would have been happy either way. I think that between the two of those, either British Bulldog or Kerry, were a great matchup against Kurt, against Mr. Perfect. So I wasn't disappointed by either one of those, and I was happy to see Kerry really get a big push early on, because I really thought that he was going to have a really good career with the WWF when he came in, and well, we know what happened, and I hope folks check out that episode, because it's a good one if you really love Kerry and what he was all about. But yeah, I wasn't disappointed in this one at all, and it could have gone either way. And I would have loved to see the British Bulldog there. And as you said, I think he would have been tremendous as an Intercontinental Champion at that point too.
Yeah, he obviously wins it in Wembley Stadium, and that's a
Mhm.
crowning moment for him too. He loses to Shawn Michaels a few months after that, but
Yeah,
this would have
not
been
too
great
far away
because
from that. Yeah.
you just came right back into the company, and he's got his long braids, and he's got that look going on. So
Yeah.
it was always interesting to think that Bulldog could have done this, but either way, Tornado loses it a few months later to Mr. Perfect anyway, so it's not like you're gonna hold it for very long. Though this is where the "where is Sapphire" part of the SummerSlam kicks in. And we are supposed to have Sensational Sherry versus Sapphire. And it's revealed that she's not there. We don't know where she is. We don't know where she is. Like everyone starts,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. We're still looking for her. There's Hacksaw Jim Duggan trying to
I watched
find.
that. Yes, Steve, I watched that yesterday, and I fell on the floor. I'm
They
so
watch
glad you reminded me of that,
when
because
he does
it's
that to
just
Dusty.
it's such a hacksaw.
Just kidding.
We don't know, but we're still looking. Dust.
We're still
Marches
looking.
off. Marches.
This was we talked about this a little bit on our Dusty episode, but was like Sapphire's like end. This was the end of her character pretty much, because they do shoot a few vignettes, but it's revealed that she was bought out by the $1 Million Man, because this match also connects to the Dusty Rhodes Macho Man match, where in that it's revealed the $1 Million Man did buy out Sapphire, and Dusty loses that match because of pretty much being heartbroken and also distracted. So it's just weird that out of nowhere, this SummerSlam flips into where's Sapphire, and I love it. Like the SummerSlam 1990, I love it so much because it has so many like weird things happening throughout the show, and that the Hacksaw Jim Duggan thing, if no one has seen it, go out there, type in Hacksaw Jim Duggan SummerSlam 1990, Dusty
Yeah.
Rhodes possibly or Sapphire, and you'll have a good laugh.
Yeah, it is a good one.
You'll have a good
And
laugh.
I have to say, I'm so glad that we were spared having to see this match happen. So Sherry got all dressed up for nothing with the Snidely Whiplash mustache. I think she was a cat, the way
It
they
was a
had
cat.
her dressed up. But I'm glad we were spared. And I think they realized, Sapphire was not. She had done some training, and you can do so much with people who don't know what they're doing in the ring. And I think they just figured it's going to be a dud no matter what we try and do with it or make it happen. And so just to try and wrap that thing up with a bow, um, you know, unfortunately, it was also kind of the end of the run here event with Dusty too. So I'm like I said, I'll leave it at that. But I was like, okay, yeah, okay. It was already too long. Let's go. I was so happy for Sapphire and the time that she had there. I'm sure she had the time of her life. It is something that and she did really a great job with it and working with Dusty. And she adored Dusty anyway prior to this, and I think that they had a great relationship. A challenge for Dusty, and he certainly pulled it off. But it had its run, and that was it. It's time
Yeah,
to go.
well, as we said in our Dusty episode, I think possibly Sapphire is also a rib on Dusty, but we can't confirm or deny that rumor.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to confirm that I believe it's true. That's what I'm confirming there. But next up, though, Warlord defeats Tito Santana. We were supposed to get Rick Martel versus Tito Santana. Rick Martel got injured though before this event, so he's not here. So instead of having Tito look strong beating Warlord, he loses to
He was
Warlord.
injured.
Well, he apparently wasn't injured. He was at a fashion show in Paris.
He was a model. You
He's a
know that
model.
is a model.
Rick the model Martel. I
That shows you
loved him.
the scorn he had for people that he would just. I'm too busy for this. I cannot.
Spray my arrogance.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have a modeling uh, performance, another appearance I must make. It's more important to me.
Of course.
You know.
I love Rick the Model
I do
Martel. When
too.
I remember showing my mom once like a picture of him when I was a kid and he's like
Yeah.
jacked up flexing and I said to my mom, I'm gonna be like him someday, Mom. She's like, we have to work out. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna be like him someday.
I'm not gonna do that. Can't work that hard.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on in that body, but I don't know if it's just, I don't know. But he looked jacked. It was, I think Royal Rumble 1990. He looks pretty big. But yeah, no Tito, Rick Martel blow off from Strikeforce breaking up. The only
Yeah.
time they fight one on one, at least I can remember, is on an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event after Survivor Series 1990. And that was really like the blow off. They never had an official one on one match, which is kind of disappointing when you think about it because
Mhm.
it worked out for the Rick the Martel Martel character. Tito Santana was still wearing Strikeforce gear for as long as I can remember until he became El Matador and went
Yeah.
back to his roots.
Yeah. Arriba. Exactly.
Reba.
You talk
Yeah.
about jacked. Man, Warlord was at his peak at that point. Man, you talk of, he didn't have that bodybuilder physique, but Jiminy Crickets. I mean, that guy, it was kind of like you just felt like, the story.
Can you itch my back for me?
Yeah, yeah. There's the story of I don't know if you've ever heard it, but Warlord wanted Kurt to give him one of his shots because he had a little trouble getting back to do, and that he went to put the thing in, and it bounced off his ass and like flew against the wall, and Kurt's response was, yeah, yeah, Warlord, you're good, you're filled up. I don't know if that ever happened, but it's a great story.
I think you're
You're
full.
all full. Yeah. We're not getting anything else in there.
Yeah,
So,
the needle
but
won't put any more in.
yeah,
I won't.
but to his credit though, that guy could move pretty well in the ring, even when
Yes.
as jacked as he was. And a lot of people have made the argument that he deserved a bigger push than he really ever got.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe because he couldn't cut the greatest promos or whatever, and then. But as far as what he could do in the ring and his look, he was like the perfect specimen for Vince McMahon. He had it all in that regard. So, but right there, man, he is looking his best. He's definitely
He's
full.
full.
The yeah the gauge is it's all the way up there. And he's ready to go for a long ride with that too.
It's like,
Yeah,
where's the line? The line broke off. Like
yeah,
we have
yeah.
gone
So
past that moment right now. We cannot
right,
put any more in you. That is hilarious.
yeah.
Um, the Hart Foundation defeat Demolition next. 2 out of 3 falls match for the tag team titles. This is also the introduction of Legion of Doom. This is also the beginning of LOD versus Demolition. Who's the ripoff? Who's the real LOD? Who's the real Road Warriors?
Yeah.
The argument will go on for the rest of time, but it's interesting because Bret Hart and Anvil introduced their, as people describe it online, the Sergeant Pepper's jackets with the little
Yeah.
thrills on the side.
I loved those jackets.
Yeah, I hated
I
them.
oh, I love the what are they called? Epaulets, the things on the side. Oh yeah, I thought yeah, that was a great look. I thought, and the Jim with the
Oh
beard
yeah,
going,
they had a
and
great look, sure.
yeah, no, I liked it. It was different, and I thought Brett looked fantastic in it. So yeah, I was a fan. I liked it. I did.
Mm, see, like
Yeah.
Brett
Okay.
eventually adopts wearing a leather jacket all the time, and then from
Hmm.
there, like it develops into his thing. But this is the beginning
Yeah.
of him having jackets all the
And
time.
also back then, Steve, I mean, how many people realized what a great combination pink and black were?
Pink and black attack.
Yeah, I mean, really, and a brave move, bold move to say, no, we're gonna have pink and black.
I
Really
would
good.
say, when you think of manly colors, people usually don't pick pink up.
No, that's what I say. I mean, that was in a sense ahead of its time. Now it's everywhere. NFL, everybody loves it. So
Now, explain to me in this match a little thing that happens because to me, if you're the referee, you're dumb as shit. Where you have to decide who's going to wrestle because there's 3 members of Demolition, there's only 2 members of the Hart Foundation. We're gonna have kind of what is it, Freebird rules where we get to decide who's going to defend the tag team titles. Well, in this, they pull off the switcheroo where we have one wrestler come in to replace another. But let me tell you something, folks. Smash doesn't look like Axe. Axe doesn't look like Crush. Crush doesn't look like either one. One's taller, one's shorter, one's pudgier, one has different hair. Are you kidding me to tell me that the referee's like, well,
yeah,
that I didn't
unless
see that.
unless Stevie Wonder is the ref. I mean, come on, that you talk about a stretch. I mean, like the haircuts were complete. The paint was different. Like you didn't even have to at least put them in the same, with the same paint on. Then you might get away with something, but yeah, there was uh the similarity stopped at they were professional wrestlers. It were those. That was it. But to confuse that was, yeah, that was out there. As Bill hides under the ring and man,
Like
yeah,
one's sweaty, one comes in dry. Like that,
like
like one's missing all their paint in the match, been wrestling for 20 minutes, and now he just comes in.
you know what they should have done something. Maybe have gotten some of Fuji's salt or some kind of a something solvent thing gets on in his eyes.
Oh, like blind the referee.
Yeah,
Okay,
I wasn't
okay.
booking. I never. I so
Mm.
and it's over. But I'm just saying they could have done anything
Besides
to
that,
try and make that believable. I
yeah.
always thought, like, what are people thinking at home? Are you? I don't know if they thought, like, how stupid is the ref, or how in the world are you trying to make me believe this is actually happening? That's
A little bit of both, probably.
yeah,
But it just reminds me of when you're a fan and you're in the crowd, like the ref's like, "What? Like, it's not him." The ref's
yeah,
like,
right. What?
"What?
Huh?
It's not someone else. He's under the ring. The what?" And then I guess those moments, I can't hear you. There's so
Yeah.
many people yelling. a little loud, a little louder, please.
Yeah, but
Yeah, no,
they tried. Boy, did they try.
yeah, they
But
tried. And LOD get involved too, setting up the demolition LOD matches later on. But again, that we talked about again, we had an LOD podcast. We did about an hour and a half on them and their run with demolition and the comparisons. Seriously, folks, this SummerSlam is hitting home all the great points we made for over an hour long beforehand. You got to check it out because we did some deep dives on these characters. But the Sergeant Pepper's jackets, really, you said you want one. I know what I'm getting you for Christmas now,
love
Mooney.
them.
I know what I'm getting you for Christmas.
I don't know if they'd let me wear it at the station, but hey, maybe
you
one
wear it
night.
around your house. Your wife might let you wear it, though.
No, she wouldn't.
All right. Well, all right. Then I have to find something else.
It's like, no, you keep that in the closet, hon.
You like it, honey?
Bring it out when you're talking to Steve Fall, but that's about it. Okay.
Yeah. Even that, I don't want you to wear it.
Yeah.
Just have it in the background. That's so damn funny.
But overall, what'd you think of the match? There was just like so much going on, but you had some talented individuals in there. I always think about when I see these matches and them trying to make Crush happen, and it's one of those maybe not that great mystery of life, but it's to me it was the same way when that tag team was formed, as they had initially, even the was it Moondog, who was the
Moondog Spot.
He was the guy that actually, they give him credit for even, helping to develop like what we're going to do with these two, this tag team. And that he was so well known that he just couldn't do the character, that people, the minute he came out, even if he had, the face paint or whatever he had on, people knew it was him. And Bill says, they told him, this ain't going to work. And that's when they brought Barry in. And it's my point being that sometimes it's just that combination of getting two people together, and it's not something you can describe as why it works. Those two work together, Barry and Bill, and that was just the end of it. And no matter what you tried to fit it in, and maybe it was just people familiarity or to between that tag team, but trying to change it or trying to bring somebody else into it just didn't work. And it is, you talk about Crush. I mean, the guy had everything. I mean, he was a great looking kid, in great shape, a huge guy, could do pretty well. Did okay, in the ring. He was okay performer, but they just couldn't, no matter what they did with him, it just never worked. And that's just the unexplainable parts of this business. He was another one of those that just fell into that barrel of people that just seemed to have it all, but you couldn't make it happen.
True. It's funny, is I like the Hawaiian version a little bit, but then he became he was in the Nation of Domination years later because he actually got in trouble with the law in real life, and so I used that as a storyline. But yeah, I thought Crush was fine. But you're right, it's hard to replace someone like Axe for Smash and say like, this guy's bigger, so he's better. Like, well, no, that's not true on all aspects of everything. But yeah, that good point. This match that we don't really have to jump into. It's Jim Duggan and Nikolai Volkoff take on the Orient Express, all very patriotic people for their own rights in different places. It's just a nice little throw this match in there. And
after Nikolai has created an entire career of his life being the evil Russian, we'll give him a flag and suddenly he's a babyface. I'm sorry, I ain't taking it. I ain't buying it. He's lying. Somehow he's going to do something. You can't just decide to and give him a Boy Scout medal and we're all good. So that whole turn with Nikolai, I was just sick about it. You don't. There's things you don't change. You don't mess with Superman's cape, and you don't mess with Nikolai Volkoff being an evil Russian. You know.
Okay. All right. Interesting point there. Hulk Hogan defeats Earthquake in the return of Hulk Hogan. No tugboat here. Unfortunately, he wasn't there. I don't know. We really didn't really figure out why. We just think his character wasn't doing that well. And again, we did a whole podcast about Earthquake, and it was a good event. I thought there. But the big main event, though, with Warrior and Rick Rude, this is Rick Rude's last WWF pay-per-view. He leaves. He's upset about paydays. He's upset about working with Warrior. He leaves and goes to WCW, and then he gets injured there, and that's the end of Rick Rude's wrestling career.
Yeah.
It's insane to think that, but like, what do you think about Rick Rude and he's furious over low payouts? Because he obviously deserves a payday because of what he's been doing with Warrior for all these years. But at the same time, like, he's not the one the little kids are buying to come see. They're coming to see Warrior, but Warrior's going to beat up somebody, and it's going to be Rick Rude. So, like, what are your thoughts on Rick Rude being like, hey, I'm the main event, but I'm out of here after this?
Yeah, well, I don't think he necessarily went into it thinking that, because I think he felt his trajectory was on the way up still, and that he was getting to that level finally where he was a main eventer. And as you mentioned, that what he put up with over how many arena shows and with the Warrior. I saw this thing, something with the other day with an interview with Jim Hellwig with the Warrior, and him talking about how he worked snug. Snug. Okay, that's one way to put it. But I think that Rick Rude actually was good for Warrior, because Rick had a long run with him, and I think initially, man, it was a disaster as far as how he put up with initially. And you hear, Barry Darsow talks about, those guys were all together. They were bouncers at Mama B's in Minneapolis, and he was asked, who was the toughest of all you guys? Now think about, the guys that you're talking that were part of this group with, Hawk and, these other guys that were there at the time. And they asked him, like, who was the toughest of you? And they said, well, he may not have been the toughest overall, but he's like the last guy you wanted to fight, because Rick was a pit bull, as he described him. And he said, well, where we were guys that basically, we threw guys out the front door, and if you wanted to fight us, then we would fight you. Rick was one of those guys that you mess with him, he was the guy going to throw the first punch. And so, Rick, a lot of people may not know, was a legit tough guy. And whether or not he was going to win every fight, he was going to be in it. And so you can imagine, and he was old school. So when the Warrior starts working snug, well, he wasn't going to put up with that. And, there's the story of the night in Savannah, I think it was, where he had enough and just worked the Warrior over during the match. And when they went backstage, because Warrior had shot his mouth off about something about him, deserving to be in the ring with him or whatever, and took him down with one shot. And that was a clear message to Warrior, look, this doesn't stand. You could be whoever the hell you think you are. And I'm sure he may have gotten some repercussions back from the front office about it. But I think it was a clear message to Jim that, dude, you want to keep working in this business, you better figure out how to take care of other people too. Mm-hmm. And I think that Jim felt that, he didn't have to at that point. So I think things changed. And during that run, I think that they started to form a bit of respect for one another. Maybe they never liked each other, but I've heard since, interviews with Jim saying, I liked Rick. Well, I think that he probably, thinking back, he appreciated that this guy didn't end him in a sense, and said, look, you can learn but you want, we can do it the hard way or we can do it the easy way. And at first it was very hard. So anyway, getting to the point that they had reached that point where the Warriors got the belt, Rick gets a shot at it. And all of this with the business it's like I said, everybody's on their own, and that's what's the beauty of it, in a sense. Like when you're someone like Vince McMahon, is that you can't put a price on this. There wasn't a scale, okay, that if you're in the main event, the belt's on the line, this is how much you get. And that meant, and for everything that went in, there was never this
It's true.
idea of, okay, this is how when you get here, you get this, when you get there, there was no scale, there was no anything set up like that. So it was all depending on what the buildup was, what the promotion, what they felt it was, what the tickets are going to sell, which by the way, this pay-per-view did really well, and what you deserve in a payday. So it's all subjective. And Rick felt that I think in some ways probably felt he should have even gotten more than the Warrior because of what he did to put him over. Because this was a different match for him. They were in a steel cage, and Warrior was used to his usual what he did: shake the ropes, go in, blah blah blah. A couple of gaga going on, clotheslines, and wrap it up. Well, this one, this match was going to be about 20 minutes long, or whatever, and you had to work in there, and you had to get up on the steel cage and all this other stuff. And I think that Rick felt that he's the one who controlled that dance and wanted to be recognized for it. And I think that was kind of the point. It's where it's dangerous when you reach that level, because if you don't have that ability to go higher, whether you're at the ceiling. And I think he recognized like this, they're not gonna ever give this to me. And so it's unfortunate because he was great. I mean, he all the way around, he was just someone you could count on. He had a lot of heat, but did he have that marquee to carry a world championship title? They didn't think so.
No, yeah, it's unfortunate,
Yeah.
but either way, unfortunately, I'm also out of time here, but from Sewer Rats to Ultimate Warrior Rick Rude to Jesse Ventura, we've talked about so many fun things today. But again, everyone, when you go out in the sun for SummerSlam, make sure you put on that sunscreen on your nose.
Yeah.
Make sure you get up there, get behind the ears too, folks. And if you need someone to put steroids into your butt, ask Mr. Perfect, because he'll do it for you, and he'll make sure to tell you if you're full or you just need to tip a little off there.
And we're all full up today.
We're all full today, but thanks for coming. But thank you so much for being here, Sean Mooney, again on the Golden Era Podcast, talking about SummerSlam 1990. I'm Steve Fall. He's Sean Mooney. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.